I'm Capriana, and I'm an interviewer here at WMAP Radio. You can tune in weekdays from 2 to 5 to catch me and some of the incredible guests that join us on our show, from doctors to authors, life coaches, actors to entrepreneurs. You can hear their stories here every day. Tune into our Long Island station, 103.9 FM weeknights from 7 to 8, in Orlando, Florida, 94.1 The Bud, and 24/7 at WMAPradio.com, where we bring you the world's most amazing people. Make us part of your day.
All right, what's going on, WMAP Radio? It's Capriana. So I have a great guest coming up. Her name is Marilynn Hughes. She's been on our show once before. She has a really cool story. She is a part of this foundation. It's called the Out of Body Travel Foundation that she founded, and she's here to talk about it. So Marilynn Hughes, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Capriana?
I am great. So just give us a little background about yourself for any of my listeners that don't really know who you are.
Well, I've been writing about out-of-body travel since about 1987, and I have over 90 books written on out-of-body travel. I founded the Out-of-Body Travel Foundation in 2003, and you can find us on the web at outofbodytravel.org. All of our resources are available for free download. And we also are involved in a lot of charitable projects around the world. So we are working to reduce spiritual and physical hunger worldwide.
So I know it's called the Out of Body Travel Foundation. So what exactly is that?
It is, another word in some respects for mystical theology. In some religious traditions, it's called mysticism. Out-of-body travel is referred a lot to in the biblical texts and in ancient sacred texts, and in fact is where a lot of our revelation comes from. And it's experiences that are actually becoming much more commonplace these days. Not sure why, but people are starting to have these experiences much more commonly in the modern era. Seems like the veil between worlds is kind of becoming thinner. I think some of that is related to the fact that a lot more people are having near-death experiences, which is something we're going to talk about in this episode as well. And so because of the fact that medical science has, gone as far as it has, we have a lot more people going towards the threshold of death and coming back to tell about it. And there is something that happens with that, which is kind of opening some of the psychic centers, and people are having mystical experiences. An out-of-body experience technically is simply the spirit separating from the body and the spirit traveling through mystical realms, not just through the physical realm, but the other spheres of existence which overlap our physical reality, of which there are quite a few, and you can read about a lot of that in my books and stuff. It's a lot more complex than I think a lot of people might realize.
Mm-hmm. So how are people having this experience?
Well, it happens to a lot of people spontaneously. When we're talking about it outside of the near-death phenomenon, for near-death experiencers, it happens usually inside either a near-fatal event or a fatal event where they're brought back. But for people who are having out-of-body experiences, they are usually having sometimes a spontaneous event. Sometimes people are having experiences where they are actually seeking it out. I mean, there's a lot of things around the world now. Robert Monroe was a pioneer in this field, and the Monroe Institute has been training people, for decades now to do this sort of thing. We have a lot of types of practices and things that people are learning nowadays to bring these things about. There's hemisync technology, there's brainwave technology. People are doing it through prayer and meditation. And so it's coming about in a number of ways. Some people experience it with guardian angels bringing them out of their bodies. Some people experience going into the vibrational state and suddenly they're out of their body. Some people intentionally bring it about. Some people it comes upon them and they have no idea how it happened, So it's not always intentional, you know what I mean?
So I'm sorry. So the people that are experiencing these things, I know a lot of people. I've read and I've heard on the news or just things like that. You know, people that have a near-death experience, such as like, you know, let's say like a car accident, for instance. They see their life flash before their eyes. They see their loved ones. They see people that, you know, have passed away, and they all kind of come to them. And then when they kind of snap out of it and come back to life, they remember it. So is it kind of like this, or is it kind of different?
Well, yes, that's very much what happens. But there's a series. You know, Dr. Raymond Moody, being the pioneer in near-death experiences, he codified, you know, a set of commonalities that you see in near-death experiences. And you mentioned some of the things there. People often will see dead relatives. A lot of them will see the tunnel. Many of them will have their life flash before their eyes. And there are a series of other things that people will experience, and not every person will experience all of them, but there is, you know, a series of things that are generally seen in those experiences. And oftentimes, you know, one of the biggest factors that people see in genuine, legitimate near-death experiences is that people's lives change dramatically when they return. They talk a lot about the unconditional love of God, the way they experience the love of God, the universe, and the way that they are shown knowledge and understanding, the things that they understand, and they come back with a purpose. And this is one of the things that they identified early on was a real key factor in being able to determine and discern, you know, the genuine from maybe not quite so clearly. So, because people would come back and literally become different people. You know what I mean? Because their whole life and their whole purpose would change to love and caring, and they had to serve. They had to change. Their whole lives changed. And that's what you will find with people who have had powerful near-death experiences, is that their entire purpose, their thrust, their reason for being here completely changes.
Now, do you think that's because they kind of came in contact with a higher being, or do you think it's maybe because when they snap out of it and then they kind of come back to life, they kind of just cherish life a lot more, and they see the beauty in things, and you know they're seeing things that they used to take for granted? So do you which one do you think it really is? Both.
What happens, but it's, you know, I would say from my own experience, it's a lot more the prior than the second one, but it's both. And the reason it's more of the prior one is because one of the common footprints of a near-death experience is that people are often shown things that they need to accomplish in their life, things that are important in their life. And almost all near-death experiences are going to near-death experiencers are going to tell you, sorry about that, are going to tell you that the things that were important were their relationships, love, caring, the way they took care of others, the way that they cared about one another, acts of kindness. So part of it was the actual experience changes them because they realize that the purpose of their existence and that which they're being measured by is completely different than what generally we believe we're being measured by in a material world. Right. So they are actually educated during the near-death experience in a completely different modality of existence, and that's part of the reason that it changes so dramatically.
Right.
But yes, obviously, too, there is a lot of near-death experiencers also talk about the realization of, you know, we really aren't here for very long. So, you know, there's an appreciation of our loved ones and an appreciation of the shortness of time and wanting to resolve things that can be resolved. And you know what I'm saying? All those things happen as well, but there is a higher thrust that comes in with that, which is the understanding of why it matters, which is the purpose of why we're here.
The purpose of life. So, you know, we've talked about people that have had experiences where they've, you know, had a near-death experience and experienced this. We've talked about people that are kind of meditating and trying to, you know, have the same effects as that. So where do you come into play? Because you sound very passionate about this and you seem to know exactly what you're talking about. So what is the root of, you know, why you started all of this?
Well, you know, I started a long time ago. So, you know.
So let's talk about it.
So, you know, it started in my childhood where I had a beautiful out-of-body experience where I was shown that I would have a purpose with this later on in my life. And then in my early 20s, it again came to me, and I started having experiences, and it began to unfold, and I started journaling these experiences, which later, you know, evolved into the writing work that I do now. But in what happened in the year 2003, I had a near-death experience, which launched the Out-of-Body Travel Foundation. And, you know, in the year 2001, I had been diagnosed with what appeared at the time to be a terminal condition.
Oh, wow.
And in 2003, I had a pretty mind-bending near-death experience, which literally changed everything.
And what exactly happened in 2003?
Well, what happened was, in 2001, I was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy and heart failure, and that's the most common reason that people will have heart transplants is for that purpose. And I had a moderate to severe case, and at first it seemed like I was going to do okay on medications, and then it started sinking. So in 2003, they had done some echocardiograms. I was sinking a little bit, and basically it looked like they were going to need to consider the possibility of either a heart transplant or something else. So I lived in a small mountain town. So we were going to be doing a procedure. They were going to have a chopper standing by to, fly me out to have me waiting for, whatever they decided to do.
Right.
And so the night before I went to the hospital, and this is what's interesting because this happened the night before the procedure, not of the procedure. So the night before the procedure, the condition that I had could cause a lot of, ventricular arrhythmias and things like that. So I went into some kind of arrhythmia that night, and so I, left my body, started, going towards what I call the galactic heavens, and there was this beautiful tunnel, of course. And one of the things that I'd already learned for many, many years of this was once you get to the end of that tunnel, you don't want to touch the veil because once you touch it, you can't go back. You know what I mean?
Right, I've heard that before too.
And so I was trying to behave, and my little dog from my childhood was there. My little dog Joy. She was a little white and black dog, and I thought that was so interesting because it was just my little dog sitting there waiting for me in the light. I was younger at the time, so I was pretty young.
Wow.
Didn't have a lot of relatives who had crossed over yet, you know what I mean? So I don't know exactly why that was.
But you had your dog waiting there for you.
I sure did.
It's a man's best friend.
That little doggy. But, so at that point, Christ came, and he took me on this journey through the heavens. It's really hard to describe, so I'll just try. But, it was just so beautiful. I was taken to an infinite number of worlds. And just the beautiful colors, the hues, and just flying at the speed of light through all these worlds. And I knew that I had been given some kind of grace where I had been allowed to do this, even though you're not really supposed to be allowed to do this unless you've made the decision you're not going back. You know what I mean?
Right. What are these worlds like?
I knew that was the case, but I didn't really know why or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right, of course.
And so I'd gone on this, fantastic journey, and it was just so wonderful and spectacular. And, I had 3 young kids at the time. My kids are all grown now. And so, I was in that space. I had 3 young children. And so Jesus returns me back where I'm in this space and I can see my husband and my 3 children. And Jesus explains to me, he's showing me this, it's like I don't know, for lack of a better word, it's like a meter which shows us our progress in life. And he tells me that the purpose of earthly life is to go from selfishness to selflessness.
Right.
And he says that I've accomplished what I need to accomplish and that I can go, but that it's still up to me, that if I want to go back, that I can go back. And then he shows me, he shows me the rest of the world, so to speak, and how the world will remain a selfish place whether I go back or not.
So I want to pause you real quick before you continue. So paint me a picture of what do you mean he shows you, and paint me a picture of when you're kind of going through all these different like galaxies and seeing different things. Like what exactly are you feeling? What are you seeing?
It's just like this whir of color, the purples, pinks, blues, whites. You're literally, when you're flying, because you're literally flying through.
So you see yourself flying. You
don't see yourself flying, you are. So
you're flying.
Yeah, so it's this, and it's just this ecstatic joy, because there's this vibration to it that is just it's just so beautiful and so beyond what we experience in this earthly world below. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? It's kind of hard to explain. It's just so, once you're there, you definitely do not want to leave. That's for sure. I'm sure you've heard that from many people who've had NDEs, but you don't want to go.
So is that heaven?
When I'm standing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So is that heaven, would you say?
What I was seeing were many heavens and many worlds is the way I would put it. And the way I've experienced it is that there's an infinite number of heavens and an infinite number of worlds, and there's an infinite number of purgatories and an infinite number of lower realms and hell realms too. And so it's not just one place; it's an infinite number of places. It's multidimensional. It's multiple. It's quantum. It's all those things. You know what I mean? So, it's many worlds in one world.
Yeah. So
and yet.
Continue.
but yet at the same time, it's literally like if you're imagining, like the old film reels. You're going from frame to frame to frame to frame to frame, literally, as you're flying from world to world to world to world. It's literally that fast. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right. So do you think that possibly, like, when you actually, when you pass on to, this other world or whatever happens, I mean, the two biggest questions in this world are what happens when we die, and, are we the only ones in this entire galaxy? So those are the two major questions that everybody knows, because we don't really know what's going to happen when we move on and when we pass away. Do you think that possibly, when we die, we are given a choice and we can just, go to all these different places that we have ever really imagined?
Well, we can, but a lot depends on our vibration, and there's a lot of processes that are required for us to be able to go to these different places, which is part of the reason for the Out of Body Travel Foundation.
Right.
Because we want to undergo preparation. Mm-hmm. We don't want to waste our time while we're here. But yes, these places do exist, and one thing I think you asked was, and I can tell you this not from this particular experience, but from several others that I had, that when you are in heaven, there are extraterrestrials in heaven, and it is as natural as anything else, and you don't even realize it until you return, and you're like, wait a minute, there were extraterrestrials in heaven.
Yeah, they're not us.
But when you're there, it's so natural, you don't even think of it. You're like, hey.
Right. We're kind of just all as one.
It's so natural, yeah. So, yeah, they're there too, and absolutely, we do have that. All the worlds converge, and so as we cross over, we are slowly reintegrated into this multiplicitous universe, which is so much greater than this little piece of it that we contain in this short life that we live.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right, of course.
And so as I'm standing there with Christ, he's showing me how this works like on a meter, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain amount of, there's almost like a bar that you would put, you know how when children, you put little things on the wall to see how much they've grown on the wall.
Yeah, of course.
And so it's like down at the bottom is, selfishness, and the higher up you go, more selfless. And so he's showing me that the majority of humanity is down here near the bottom of the scale. And he's telling me, this is, it's not going to change if you go back, and that's how it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. And I said, but as long as it remains my choice, I have to go back because I have to go back to my kids. Mm-hmm. And he says, okay, well then I want you to go back and pray for a heart transplant.
Wow.
And I looked at him, and I got real quiet, and I just looked at him dead set in the eyes, and I said, I can't do that. And he's very quiet and looking at me. And
he's looking at you, waiting to make a decision whether you want to pass on to this beautiful life that you kind of just experienced, floating through all these different galaxies, or going back to, I guess we can call it reality with your husband and your children. So he's kind of waiting for you to make this decision.
Yes, definitely. And so what I then tell him is, I said, okay, so I'm going to go back, but I'm not going to pray. I'm not going to pray for a heart transplant. Instead, I'm going to pray that you will save the perfectly healthy soul that would have to die to grant me a heart transplant.
Wow.
And I will take my chances with the heart that I've got. And he stares at me for a minute, and he says, I grant that. And then all of a sudden, I'm just shooting through space, and he's shooting with me. And we emerge, we're coming back. I know I'm coming back to Earth. And before I'm going to go back in, we're sitting in what's like a bookstore almost. And it's like he's sitting next to me, and I see all these books. And they all have my name on them.
All the things you've done, Marilynn.
It was funny because, this was 2003, right before I did all this. And he said, I'm going to make good use of you. And he said, I'm going to help you. He said, I'm not going to heal you, but I'm going to help you. Mm-hmm. And then, he's gone. And I end up coming back. I don't say anything about it because I have to go to the hospital that morning.
And this is all before
the procedure.
Wow.
So I go to the hospital, go in and have the procedure done. And when I wake up, I'm in the hospital, still in the same place, and I'm, asking the doc, hey, why am I still here? And he said, we can't explain it, but your heart's doing a heck of a lot better this week than it was a week ago, and we don't know why. And I just kept quiet because I knew why. And, and literally it was 6 months later that the Out-of-Body Travel Foundation was born. Literally shortly after that experience, I just got bombarded with these out-of-body experiences telling me every step that I was to do to put this into action and to make it happen and put everything into play. And so it was such an amazing experience, something I'll never forget. I mean, even I can still remember just that trip with Jesus through the many, many worlds. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to even describe it, but I can't wait to do that again, and to do it again in the sense of, whenever it's, the time to do it permanently. And, It's interesting because another thing that happens with a lot of near-death experiencers is they're not afraid of death anymore. That's for sure. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
they kind of come to terms with it.
Yeah. No. People end up not being afraid of death. I know some people are afraid of the process of dying in terms of how much pain they might go through.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've heard from a lot of people. But most people lose the fear of dying itself. But yeah, the idea, everybody that I have spoken to who's had these experiences, there's a certain melancholy of, looking forward to the time I can return, but I got work I got to do, so I guess I better get to it,
I think he definitely, took what you said into consideration and left you here on this earth to, touch different lives and touch different souls of people and, bring out the best in people and do what you're supposed to do here on earth.
Well, there was something that Pastor Howard Storm said in a documentary that I was also involved in. It's called The Road to Armageddon, a spiritual documentary, and you can find that at my website at outofbodytravel.org. You can watch it there. But Pastor Howard Storm was an atheist who had a near-death experience, and he has a beautiful story to tell as well. But he spoke about how during his near-death experience, Christ told him, I want you to save the world. And he's like, what? Are you kidding? And I loved how he put it because he's like, I can't do that. What are you talking about? And he says, like, Jesus is kind of like, not just you idiot. He's like, I've got like 1 million of you. And, and I think one of the great things about the way he describes his experience is because that's really what these experiences are telling us and telling the people listening through us, because there are millions of us, whether the people who are listening, whether you've had a conscious experience like this or not, there are millions of us, and that's how Jesus and how God is working. It's by calling each of us to, perform little acts of kindness or caring every single day, regardless of how small or how great. It's the little things that resonate in heaven, and it's extremely important that people realize this. Sometimes, Mother Teresa was a big part of the Out of Body Travel Foundation's formation as well, because we founded it based on the fact that she said that the spiritual suffering of the West was so much more serious than the physical suffering in the East. But she also said that you start with a smile. And when you think how simple that is, everyone can offer that. Just about everyone can offer that. Mm-hmm. And so we forget that we can start transformation of the planet by very simple words and deeds. Little things, very small things, and they can multiply and they become greater and bigger.
Of course, you never know what someone's going through in their life. So if you the only thing that you can offer is if you can just offer a smile, I mean, that could just change someone's day completely. And, I want to leave off with this. And next time we will talk, when we get you back on the show, we'll talk about what your life was like after, having that encounter with Jesus and going through the different galaxies. So I'm very eager to have you back on our show next time. So once again, we have Marilynn Hughes on the phone. She is the author of Out of Body Travel and the founder of the Out of Body Travel Foundation. So Marilynn, if any of my listeners are interested in contacting you, what is a website that we would be able to find you? outofbodytravel.org. And for your book, it's called Out of Body Travel as well. So where would we be able to find your book? Amazon, Barnes & Noble?
Everywhere that you go online. And actually the one I would have people start with is called The Mysteries of the Redemption. And you can see all of our books are available at the website under Out of Body Books. And they're on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Audible, Kindle, all everywhere online. So you can find them pretty much wherever. And you can also download them freely at the website. If you can't afford them, they're freely available as well.
And once again, guys, her website is outofbodytravel.org. Marilynn just doesn't have just, 1 or 2 books. She's written 98 books, 40 magazines, and around 15 CDs on out of body travel. So it's pretty amazing. Definitely check out, a couple of her books because she's definitely got plenty. All right. Until next time, Marilynn, you have a great rest of your week now, okay?
You too. Thanks so much. It was great talking to you.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. So up next at 3:30, we have Mike Broomer. He is part of our Long Island Summer Series. And at 4:30, we have Jade McAuliffe. She has been on our show a number of times. She is part of our Simply Amazing Women book series. So stay tuned, guys.